The blizzard doesn't just fall. It attacks Aspen, Colorado. Inside the glass fortress of Eagles Point, a heavy door slams shut. The click of the deadbolt is louder than the storm. 6-year-old Leo in thin pajamas is pushed out. He scrambles to wrap his 2-year-old sister, Mia, in the one small coat thrown after them. They are alone on the wrong side of the door, abandoned by the one person who should have been their protector. Behind a perfect icy blue gaze waits a plan to dismantle an empire fueled by greed and a single milk-soaked legal document. But one small yellow tracker in Leo's pajama pocket is more than just a toy. Its tiny green light is about to blink, sending an impossible message to the outside world. Hypothermia. And miles away in a warm police station, a German Shepherd K9 named Max will suddenly rise to his feet. When Max moves, the storm will shift from a prison to a rescue mission, from cold despair to a desperate race against time. Aspen, Colorado, was a city of stark contrasts, where extreme wealth pressed against the raw, unforgiving spine of the Rocky Mountains. High above the town, the Eagles Point mansion clung to the mountainside, a structure of glass and dark steel. Inside, Arthur Vance paced by the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 40, he ran a tech empire, his face angular and marked by permanent stubble. He was a widower, a fact that left a quiet sadness in his deep-set eyes. "The pilot says we need to leave within the hour if we want to beat the front," he said, turning to his wife. "This Singapore trip, it's vital." Serafina, a decade younger, stood near the fireplace. She was tall with a model's slender frame, dressed in cream-colored cashmere. Her ash-blonde hair was pulled into a severe, elegant bun, highlighting her flawless pale skin and icy blue eyes. She turned, a perfectly crafted smile instantly appearing. "Of course, darling, we understand. Go secure the future." Her gaze flickered to the 2 children on the rug. Leo, at 6, was a small, serious version of his father, his hand protectively holding his sister's. Mia, only 2, was frail with fine blonde hair, clutching a worn teddy bear. She had just recovered from an illness, and her breathing was still slightly raspy. "Do you have to go, Dad?" Leo asked. Guilt tightened Arthur's chest. He crossed the room and knelt, pulling both children into a fierce hug. "It's the last trip for a long time, Leo. I promise. You're the man of the house. Look after Mia." He pulled out a small, durable device on a bright yellow carabiner shaped like a compass. "This is our special communicator. It's a high-altitude ski GPS, but it's for you. If you're scared or just need me, press the red button. It sends a signal straight to my phone, no matter where I am." He clipped it to Leo's belt loop. "Just for emergencies, Commander." Leo's fingers closed around it. "Like Batman." "Exactly," Arthur said, his voice thick. The distant rhythmic thud of a helicopter began to vibrate through the glass. Arthur stood, gave his wife a quick, awkward kiss, and hugged his children one last desperate time. "Be good. I love you." He grabbed his briefcase and strode out. Leo and Mia scrambled to the window, pressing their small hands to the cold glass. They watched the sleek black helicopter lift into the gray sky, hover, and then disappear over the jagged peak. Absolute silence flooded the room. Leo turned. Serafina was standing exactly where Arthur had left her. The transformation was immediate. The soft, welcoming smile was gone. Her face hardened, and her icy blue eyes, now stripped of all pretense, were cold and assessing. She looked at the 2 children, no longer family, but obstacles. "Go to the playroom, and do not make a mess." The playroom was at the far end of the West Wing, a sprawling space that should have been joyful, but felt as cold and sterile as a museum exhibit. Leo led his sister to a small alcove with a thick rug, sitting with his back to the wall facing the door. Outside the enormous bay windows, the world was dissolving. The wind hit the house with a low, guttural howl, and pellets of icy snow began to rattle against the reinforced glass. The sky was now a churning, opaque white. Inside the study, Serafina pressed her thumb to the scanner. The heavy door hissed open and clicked shut, sealing her inside. She sat at the massive mahogany desk and activated her encrypted laptop. She initiated a video call. The face that appeared was that of Mr. Graves, a managing partner at a boutique law firm in Zurich. "The transfers are initiated, Mrs. Vance," he whispered. "But the final tranche, the one tied to the children's trust." It's proving complex. Mr. Graves, Serafina interrupted, her voice a flat, deadly monotone. I am not paying you to be impressed by my husband's controls. I am paying you to bypass them. The power of attorney he signed is ironclad. You have 1 week. I want everything liquid, and I want it moved to the Cayman entity before the Singapore deal closes. Is that understood? She ended the call without waiting for a reply. In the playroom, the world was shrinking. The wind was no longer a howl. It was a physical presence, a screaming entity. Mia, who had been drowsy, was now fully awake and terrified. She began to whimper, burying her face in Leo's sweater. The lights in the room flickered once, twice, then dimmed to half strength as the backup generators kicked in. That was all it took. Mia's whimper escalated into a high-pitched, terrified wail. Serafina heard it through 2 feet of soundproofed mahogany. The sound was thin, infuriating, and most importantly, distracting. She was on an important call, and the man on the other end paused. Is everything all right there, Serafina? It's nothing, she hissed. Just the children. But the wail continued. Hold on, Serafina snapped, muting the call. She shoved back from the desk and strode from the study. She found them in the alcove. Leo was rocking Mia frantically, his own face pale with stress. Shoo, Mia, please be quiet. She'll hear you. Shut her up, Serafina's voice cut through the child's crying. Leo froze, looking up at her. I said, Serafina repeated, stepping into the room, to shut her up. I am on a call. I'm trying, Leo pleaded, his voice cracking. She's scared of the storm. She's just scared. He stood up, putting his small body between Serafina and his sister. Can't you just close your door? It was the wrong thing to say. It was defiance. Serafina's control simply snapped. She moved faster than Leo could react. Her hand flashed through the air. The sound of the slap was sharp, a brittle crack that was louder than the wind. Silence. Mia's crying stopped instantly, choked off by shock. Leo stood perfectly still, his small hands slowly rising to his cheek. It wasn't the pain, it was the shock. Serafina stood for a second, looking at her own hand, not with regret, but with faint disgust. Do not, she whispered, her voice trembling with restrained rage. Interrupt me again. She turned and strode back to the study. The heavy door clicked shut. Leo did not move. He just stared at the empty doorway, the hot, stinging print of her fingers burning on his skin. He sank to his knees, his eyes falling to the small yellow device on his hip. He touched it. His father said, emergencies. He was 6 years old, and he didn't know what this was, but it felt worse than any storm. Hours passed. The emergency lights cast long, sterile shadows. The storm did not relent. Mia began to stir against his chest, her small body trembling. Hungry, she mumbled. Leo, milk, hunger. He had forgotten. They hadn't eaten since before his father left. He knew, with cold clarity, that Serafina was not coming to feed them. Okay, Mia. Okay, we'll get milk. He opened the playroom door. The hallway was darker, colder. He crept past the closed door of the study and hurried toward the grand staircase. The kitchen was on the main floor, a cavernous space of black granite and stainless steel. It was freezing. He pulled the refrigerator door open. He saw it, a glass bottle of organic milk. He set Mia down, climbed onto a bar stool, retrieved the heavy bottle, and found Mia's plastic sippy cup. He was concentrating so hard on not dropping the bottle that he didn't see the stack of papers Serafina had left on the island's edge. As he tipped the bottle, his small trembling hands couldn't control the flow. Milk gushed out, missing the cup entirely. It streamed across the black granite, hitting the stack of papers, soaking the top pages instantly. No, Leo gasped, dropping the bottle, which rolled on its side, spilling even more. What is this? The voice was not a whisper. It was a low, guttural snarl. Serafina stood at the kitchen's main entrance. Her hair was no longer in its perfect bun, and her icy eyes were bloodshot with a terrifying, sleepless intensity. She wasn't looking at the children. She was staring at the puddle of milk as it dripped from the counter. She walked forward, her movement stiff, robotic. She looked at the papers, her fingers tracing the blurred signature line of what was the final transfer order for Leo's own trust fund. The milk had rendered it unusable. You, little brat, she hissed. She grabbed him by the arm, her fingers digging in like claws. Leo cried out in pain. Mia, seeing him hurt, began to scream. Shut up, Serafina screamed. She grabbed Mia's arm with her other hand. She didn't guide them. She dragged them. She dragged both children across the kitchen floor through the puddle of milk. No, we're sorry. It was an accident, Leo twisted. I don't care, she spat. She was heading for the mudroom, the small service door off the kitchen. She reached the door and fumbled with the deadbolt. Leo, in a last desperate surge, clung to the door frame. No, please. It's storming. We'll be good. You, she said, her voice dangerously calm as she pried his small fingers from the wood. We'll be gone. She yanked the heavy door open. The storm exploded into the house. It was a physical wall of white, a deafening, screaming void. The temperature instantly dropped to freezing. Serafina didn't hesitate. With a final surge of rage, she shoved them. Leo stumbled, losing his grip on Mia. He fell forward onto the snow-covered stoop. Mia tumbled out after him. Leo scrambled to his knees in the gathering drift, turning back. Serafina, no. She stood in the doorway, a perfect silhouette against the warm light of the kitchen. Her face was beautiful, serene, and utterly empty. Her eyes flickered to a small coat hook by the door. On it hung Leo's small blue parka. She reached over, ripped the parka from the hook, and threw it. The small coat tumbled into the snowdrift a few feet away from them. Don't freeze on my doorstep, she said. The door slammed shut. The click of the deadbolt sliding home was as loud and final as a vault closing. They were outside. They were alone. For a second, there was no sound but the thud of the deadbolt. Then the cold, which had been a shock, became a physical weight. The wind shrieked, a high-pitched sound that felt like it was sanding the skin from his face. Mia rolled off into the snowdrift. She didn't cry. She just gasped, too shocked to even form a scream. Mia. Leo's paralysis broke. The coat. Serafina had thrown the coat. He scanned the darkness. There, a small dark blue shape already half buried. He crawled on his hands and knees. The snow was deep and powdery, and his hands sank into it. The cold instantly numbed his fingers. He grabbed the parka and scrambled back to Mia. He wrapped the unzipped coat around her, front to back, like a thick, clumsy blanket. He pulled the hood over her fine blonde hair and cinched it tight. The stoop was death. The wind was coming straight at them. He knew he couldn't get back in. He had to find shelter. He grabbed the bundled parka with Mia inside it. We have to move now. He dragged her along the side of the house, his bare feet sinking, then stinging, then feeling nothing at all. On the north side of the deck, tucked into the foundation, was a deep stone-lined alcove used to keep the firewood dry. It was dark, probably full of spiders, but it was out of the wind. He stumbled into it, collapsing into the dry, dusty space that it was small, maybe 4 feet deep, but the difference was immediate. The shrieking wind was muffled. It was still freezing, but the wind chill was gone. Leo pushed a half-frozen log aside and shoved Mia into the furthest corner. He unwrapped the parka and with trembling fingers, finally managed to get her arms into the sleeves. He zipped it up. The coat was huge on her, swallowing her whole. She was crying now, a high-pitched wail. Cold, Leo, cold, cold, cold. I know, Mia. I know. He sat behind her, pulling her small parka-wrapped body onto his lap, pressing her back against his chest. He wrapped his own thin arms around her. He buried his face in the top of her hood. He rocked her back and forth. It's okay. It's okay. Daddy's coming. He's coming. Time ceased to exist. It was just the darkness, the roar of the storm, and the cold. The cold was a living thing, a predator seeping into his bones. Leo kept rocking, kept talking, but Mia's wails were fading. They became whimpers, then just soft, shuddering breaths. Her body felt less like a squirming child and more like a simple, heavy weight. A terrifying stillness settled over her. Mia, he whispered, his voice cracking. He shook her gently. Mia, wake up. You can't sleep. Her head lolled back, her eyes half closed, her lips tinged with a faint dusky blue. Tired, Leo, she mumbled. So tired. Panic colder than the ice stabbed Leo in the chest. This was worse than the slap, worse than the door. She was leaving. He shook her harder. No, Mia, wake up. You can't. She didn't respond. He was losing her. His father's words echoed in his head. Emergencies, Commander. His hand clawed in his pajama pocket. He felt the hard rectangular shape. He pulled it out. The small compass-shaped device felt like a block of ice. His thumb, numb and useless, fumbled for the red button. He couldn't feel it. He jammed his thumb down with all his remaining strength. He counted. 1, 2, 3. Did it work? He held the device up in the pitch blackness, his hand shaking. He squinted and he saw it. A tiny green pinprick of light blinking slowly. Blink, blink, blink. It was on. It was sending. Hope so fierce it was almost painful surged through his chest. It was a signal, a light in the dark, a call to Batman. He carefully tucked the blinking device inside the parka with Mia, zipping it up, pressing it against her small chest. He pulled her back against him, tighter than before. He had done it. He had done everything. Now there was nothing left to do but wait. He closed his eyes, his cheek resting on her hood, and wrapped his arms around his sister in the snow. He's coming, he whispered. Hold on, Mia. Daddy's coming. The Aspen Police Department was a small concrete bunker against the apocalypse. Outside, the blizzard was a physical assault. Inside, the air was dry, overheated, and smelled of burnt coffee and wet wool. The phones were ringing incessantly. Sergeant Miller was coordinating the chaos with weary cynicism. Officer Cade was standing in the corner, his eyes fixed on his own monitor. At his feet, unmoving, lay Max, a 4-year-old German Shepherd K9. Miller glanced at Cade. Relax, Cade. The mountain's not going anywhere. Nothing we can do but wait it out. The rich folks up at Eagles Point are probably just cracking another bottle of wine. Cade was about to turn away when something flashed on his screen. It was a tiny pulsing icon, a faint red dot. Sarge, what is this? A PLB? Miller squinted. Personal locator beacon? Probably a skier who went out of bounds. Stupid. No, Cade said. It's not on the slopes. It's at the Vance Mansion, Eagles Point. He brought up the details. Registration, Vance Arthur Trust device. Alpine GPS tracker. Model, Commander. Child status. Emergency. Active alert, hypothermia. Sarge, this thing is broadcasting a hypothermia alert from inside the mansion. Miller sighed. It's a glitch, Cade. The storm screwing with the satellites. Or it's a toy. A rich kid's toy. Stand down. We're not sending a unit up that mountain for a toy. But Cade didn't press the clear button. Sarge, he said, this alert isn't a button press. It's a temperature reading. The beacon is cold. Impossibly cold. Miller just grunted. It's a glitch. Leave it. Then Max, who had been dormant, suddenly lifted his head. His ears snapped forward. He rose in one fluid motion. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stared at Cade, his entire body rigid. He let out a low, pressurized whine. Cade looked at the dog. Max looked back. The dog knew something was deeply, terribly wrong. That was all Cade needed. He trusted his dog more than Miller's logic. He grabbed his storm gear. Where the hell do you think you're going? Miller snapped. I'm going to check on a glitch, Cade said. The dog's bored. We need a walk. Cade, that's an order. Stand down. Cade paused at the door. It's a wellness check, Sarge. The beacon is active. The alert is hypothermia. If that kid is outside and I'm sitting in here when he freezes to death, I can't live with that. The dog can't either. He didn't wait for a reply. He and Max stepped out into the blizzard. The world vanished. The wind was a solid, deafening roar. Snow moved horizontally, a blinding spray of icy shrapnel. Cade pulled his hood tight. Max braced against the onslaught. The police Tahoe was a vague shape 20 feet away. Okay, boy, Cade yelled. This is it. He threw the Tahoe into gear. The drive was a treacherous crawl. He was driving blind, relying on GPS and the dog beside him. Max stood on the passenger seat, his front paws braced on the dash, his body rigid. He whined low in his chest, his nose pressed to the windshield vent. I see it, boy, Cade muttered. I see the He turned onto the steep private road leading to Eagles Point. The Tahoe's four-wheel drive engaged. The world became a narrow, terrifying tunnel of white. Max's whining escalated into short, sharp barks, scratching at the dashboard. Easy, I'm going. Then a violent, jarring crunch. The vehicle stopped dead. Cade swore. They were stuck that he killed the engine and flicked on the spotlight. A massive snowdrift piled against a fallen tree completely blocked the road. 10 feet high. Impassable. He looked at the GPS. The red dot was still blinking. 400 meters straight up the hill. He looked at Max, who was launching himself against the window, barking hysterically. All right, he said. On foot. He grabbed his emergency go bag and checked his radio. Dispatch, this is Kilo 9er. Tahoe is disabled. I am proceeding on foot to the beacon. He didn't wait for Miller's reply. He unclipped Max's leash. Let's go, boy. Fine. He pushed his door open. The wind tore it from his grasp. He and Max plunged into the maelstrom. The snow was waist deep. Max bounded ahead, his powerful legs churning. Cade followed, leaning into the wind, the red dot his only guide, the frantic barking his only compass. 400 meters. In this, it might as well have been 400 miles. Max porpoised, leaping into the air, plunging into drifts, exploding upward again. A black and tan missile locked onto an unseen target. Find, Max, find, Cade roared. He lost sight of the dog for 3 terrifying seconds. Then Max reappeared, barking frantically, urging him on. This was a life-or-death bark that he scrambled up the incline, grabbing frozen branches to pull himself forward. He clawed over the final ridge. The house was above him, a vast dark shape. Dead. No lights. Max didn't go to the front entrance. He veered hard right, scrambling along the north-facing foundation wall. He stopped at a deep built-in alcove and began to dig, whining, clawing frantically at firewood logs, sending sprays of snow and bark flying. What, Max? What is it? Cade pulled his flashlight. He aimed the beam into the alcove. At first, nothing. Just wood. Just snow. Then Max ripped the final log away, and Cade saw it. A child, his heart stopped. He lunged forward. Leo. He saw a small boy in thin, saturated blue pajamas. His body curled fetal. The boy's skin was pale waxy blue, his lips almost black. He was shivering violently and holding something. Another child, a tiny girl wrapped in an adult-sized parka stiff with ice. Cade put his glove to the boy's neck. A pulse, thready, faint, but there. He aimed his light at the girl. Still, utterly still. Dispatch, Cade screamed into his radio. I have them. 2 children. Code blue. Severe hypothermia. Only static. Then a second light cut through the storm, sweeping across the alcove. Leo, my God, Leo. Mia. A man crashed through the snowdrift. Arthur Vance. His face was a mask of primal terror, still wearing his cashmere sweater and dress trousers, now soaked and frozen. He had driven like a madman from Denver. His flight turned back by the storm. He'd gotten the alert on his phone. Leo Vance. Alert, hypothermia. Location, Eagles Point. He'd driven 100 miles in 90 minutes, abandoned his truck, clawed his way up on foot, following the cop that he fell into the alcove, hands grabbing at his son. Cade took command. Sir, I'm Officer Cade. I've got them. We have to move now. He ripped open a thermal blanket and wrapped it around Leo. Take him. Hold him to your chest. Your heat. Arthur nodded, grabbed his son. Cade turned to Mia. He unzipped the parka. His heart sank. She was limp, her skin ash-colored. But as he pulled the coat open, a small green light blinked from the darkness. The tracker. Leo had tucked it inside with her. Still blinking. Blink, blink. A tiny defiant pulse of life. Cade pressed his fingers under her jaw. He waited. A flutter. A pulse so faint it was barely human. She was alive. Got you, he whispered. He wrapped her in the second blanket, scooped her up, tucked her inside his parka against his vest. Max, to the door. Find the door. Arthur was already on his feet, cradling Leo, stumbling toward the house. Serafina, he roared. Serafina, open the door. He reached the mudroom door. It was locked. He slammed his shoulder against it. Serafina. Cade was behind him. Sir, step back. He raised his boot and kicked below the deadbolt. The wood groaned, but held. Max was barking hysterically. Arthur slammed his fist against the wood, his voice breaking. Why is it locked? Serafina. Cade shoved Arthur aside. Back. He unholstered his weapon. He was not going to let them die on the doorstep. The silence before the gunshot was absolute. Cade's arm was steady, his finger tightening. He was applying the final pressure when a sound inside, a sharp metallic click, froze him. The deadbolt slid back. The door was yanked open. Serafina stood there bathed in golden kitchen light. A vision of domestic perfection. Her ash-blonde hair slightly mussed. Her face a mask of practiced concern. My God, I heard pounding. I was so worried the lie died. Her icy blue eyes wide with feigned panic, instantly constricted. She wasn't looking at the children. She was staring with dawning horror at the man holding Leo. Arthur. He was supposed to be over the Pacific. He was supposed to be gone. Arthur, she breathed, her face draining of color. The mask shattered. For 1 second, Cade saw the real woman, a creature of pure cold calculation, trapped. Arthur said nothing. He simply looked at her, his face ravaged by ice and wind, a portrait of agonizing realization. He looked at the locked door, at his son blue and trembling, at the officer holding his daughter, back at his wife. In that one silent glance, she was tried, judged, and convicted. Get inside, Cade barked, shoving past her. Get them on the floor, away from the cold. He burst into the kitchen, Arthur stumbling behind. The warmth was a shocking, painful slap. Cade didn't spare Serafina another glance. The children were the mission. Put him down gently, he commanded. Cade laid Mia on the rug, ripping open his med kit. He tore open chemical heat packs, shaking them violently, stuffing them into the blanket around Mia. Call 911, he yelled. 2 pediatric code blues, severe hypothermia, need immediate evac. Arthur fumbled for his phone, frozen fingers unable to work the screen. Serafina, frozen at the door, finally moved. Darling, she began, her voice a trembling purr. I don't know what happened. They must have run out. I was looking. Arthur didn't look at her. He held his hand up, a gesture of absolute finality. Stop, he whispered, his voice broken. Cade heard Serafina step away from the door, toward the study. Don't move, Cade said, his voice low, dangerous. Ma'am, you will stand by that door, and you will not move 1 inch. He saw Mia's eyelids flutter, a faint breath. Come on, kid, he whispered. Stay with me. He looked at Arthur. Sir, give her to me. Take your son. Get your wet clothes off now. Both of you. Skin to skin now. It's the only way. Arthur, galvanized, handed Cade the phone and scooped up Leo, ripping his frozen sweater off. He collapsed onto another rug, cradling his son against his bare chest, wrapping them in a cashmere throw. Cade finished the call, then turned to the woman by the door. Max had not moved. He stood between Cade and Serafina, body low, a deep rattling growl. He knew. Serafina was staring at the kitchen counter at the milk-soaked, ruined documents. Her face was no longer terrified. Empty. The face of a gambler who'd watched the last card turn. She locked the door, Cade said. Not a question. Arthur looked up, eyes filled with terrible, silent understanding. Officer Cade, Serafina said, her voice cold and flat as granite. You are making a mistake. The only mistake, Cade said, ripping zip cuffs from his belt as sirens wailed in the distance, was yours. 3 months later, the snow in Aspen had receded. The brutal white was giving way to deep, wet green. In a public park near town, the sound of a dog barking was one of joy, not desperation. Max, no longer a K9, just a dog, bounded across the thawing grass, a bright red ball in his mouth. He dropped it at the feet of a small boy in a new red parka. Leo, his cheeks pink and full, laughed, picked it up, and threw it again. You missed, Max. Nearby, Arthur Vance sat on a park bench, watching. He looked 10 years older, his hair streaked with gray, but the haunted look in his eyes was gone. He was just a father watching his son. Mia, now fully recovered, was bundled in a snowsuit, taking small, determined steps toward a man in a civilian jacket. Cade, she squealed, holding her arms up. Officer Cade, off duty, laughed and scooped her up, swinging her into the air. He'd become a permanent fixture in their lives, a quiet, steady presence. He sat on the bench next to Arthur, balancing Mia on his knee. The DA called this morning. Arthur said quietly, never taking his eyes off Leo. She's pleading guilty. Attempted murder, 2 counts. They won't even need the financial fraud charges. Good, Cade said. She'll be gone a long time. The GPS, the tracker, Arthur said, his voice thick. They said it was the key. The data log. It showed the second it went from 70 degrees in the playroom to 10 degrees on the stoop. It logged the time to the second. It's what crucified her. The kid did that, Cade said, nodding toward Leo. He's the one who pressed the button. He's the hero, Arthur. Arthur smiled, a real, tired smile. His gaze shifted to Max, now rolling on his back, letting Leo rub his belly. The doctors, they said Mia had maybe 10 more minutes. 15 tops. You too. You didn't just find them. You were a miracle. Cade looked at the 2 children, now giggling as they both tried to tackle the massive happy dog. He thought of the blizzard, the impossible cold, and the tiny green light blinking in the dark. Sometimes, Cade said, Miracles just wear badges. And sometimes they have 4 paws. Arthur nodded, and for the first time since that night, he turned his face up to the sun, feeling its warmth, and watched his children play.